The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 824. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have another amazing Asian Women Who Boss Up co-author. We're just super excited about this book. We've been getting so much great feedback. People saying how, finally a platform for Asian women, or, having a book that their daughters can read as well, or they can read with their daughters, or instill that mentality that they've been wanting to do. And so we've just been getting such amazing feedback about this book and just super excited. And today's co-author, she's a business coach, and I'm super excited to have her on today to share her wisdom and her excitement for the book. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Clare Wimmer. Clare, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show, Sheena. My name is Clare Wimmer. I am Chinese-born, American-raised, and I currently live and work in Munich, Germany. What I have done basically for the last almost 8 years now, is I've been a business coach. And what this means, having living in a country that doesn't have English as a first language, means I help people go international. The English level in Germany is quite high. So mostly what I do is strategy consulting and working with companies as they expand into markets, whether it's into Europe, different markets in Europe, different markets in the United States, or different markets in specifically China, because that is actually my forte, taking businesses into China. And yeah, I was really, really excited about this book. One, because I think it's a great opportunity to be with other Asian women. And this is a rare opportunity for everybody, I think, because we rarely see a lot of us in one place that are all super successful in our own ways. And we all have our own stories in our own ways. And a lot of times, especially growing up on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., it's always there's one Asian person who is very successful, or there's another Asian person 3 towns down. So I think this is the first time where we got to be together. And, us ladies, we're quite diverse, so it's quite interesting to see the stories that come out and to see the background and the perspectives that have come through.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Clare, how does the model minority myth hurt Asian women as a whole?
I think the model minority, it gives women a lot of pressure. I remember growing up, I was not great at math. I was good at math, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't great at math. And we are supposed to be the quiet ones, and we are supposed to obey. And I think in my life, I've been hired by bosses, and they're like, oh, you're not quiet, and you definitely don't obey. And I'm just like, well, you might see me as this nice Asian girl, but when you really get to know me, I'm pretty much tough as nails. So you better watch out. And I think that's something that people take for granted as this model minority. We are obedient, we are quiet, we are this. I mean, honey, I grew up in New York City. For college, I worked on Wall Street. I worked on a trading floor. So nothing about me is docile. Nothing about me is quiet. I may appear calm sometimes, but that's just me faking it, So I think the model minority myth, it's something that's hard to live up to because it's not a reality. I actually don't know one Asian woman that in reality is really quiet and docile. Every Asian woman that I've actually gotten to know are quite strong and resilient and fierce in their own way. It's interesting how that came about. So for me, yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's not really true.
Thanks for sharing that. And I love how you mentioned that, right? I know a lot of society just thinks we're quiet and submissive. And because of that, they don't take us seriously. They don't put us in leadership roles or promotions in corporations, or even be CEOs of our own company. And this is why it's so important to put ourselves out there and show others, especially our Asian sisters, what's possible. And why is creating a stronger representation of Asian women so important for you?
Well, I mean, let's just do it from a numbers perspective, right? Chinese is the most spoken language in the world. There's I don't know what the new number is, 1.4 million, 1.2 billion, excuse me, Chinese people, but that's just in China. So we're not even counting Southeast Asia and all the other parts of the world that speak Chinese. So this is just Chinese. That's one part of Asian. There's also the Korean, Japanese, Singaporean, the Malay, and then Thailand, and so on. And that is all encompassing Asian. So this is, I would say, fair to say, like, I don't know, 75%, 80% of the population. So the fact that 80% of the population is Asian and there's not enough Asian representation is just a joke. I remember when Crazy Rich Asians, or whatever that movie, when it came out, people were like, oh my God, it's the first movie with the whole Asian cast. I was like, no, it's not. The Joy Luck Club was an all Asian cast as well. But it's just every 10 years, one movie comes out that's all Asian. And people are shocked that it's all Asian. It depends on where you live. And I think from our lifetime, like from my parents' lifetime, America, the West was where everything is. In my lifetime, we're seeing the shift for everything moving to Asia. Like when people would do study abroad programs in the United States or in the UK. And now everyone is trying to do a study abroad program somewhere in Asia because that's where the future is. And I think I have 2 young children. For me, they will go to Asia. I'm pretty sure of it. And that's the future. And so I think Asian representation, strong women Asian representation is really important because as the generation, my children's generation grow, I think they will finally, say Asia will come back to its rightful place of a superpower within the world. And think about it. Just think in numbers terms. We're 80% of the world. I mean, I could be making that up. It could be a lot lower. But if India is included in this, I'm pretty sure with 2 billion people or more, we're the majority of the world.
It's so true, right? Because Asia is like the biggest continent out of all the continents. So it makes sense. And I love, sharing in numbers terms, right? Because we don't realize how big the Asian community is, right? And how many different cultures we have. Most people think all Asian people are Chinese and that we all look alike. And we get that all the time, especially in Canada, right? We get like this polite racism, like you look like Kathy because she's Chinese, but like I look nothing like Kathy. So, I mean, this is why it's so important to create this book. And how does it feel being that representation for so many Asian women in the world?
So I think for me personally, that's actually an interesting thing because I've never actually felt so Asian. I left Asia when I was 6. I grew up on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., where I was probably the only Asian. And so I didn't really start embracing being Asian until I got to college in New York City, where, guess what? There's a ton of Asian people. And so for me, I think I'm not unique in this sense because my generation, our generation, a lot of us grew up in the West, where if you're lucky, you might have landed somewhere where there's huge Asian community. But I personally landed where there wasn't. And so moving out of it, living in Europe right now where I am, when I moved to Germany 10 years ago, I felt like the only Asian. Now there's more grad students here that are Chinese and more Chinese people who own German companies and they're Chinese. And there is a growing facet of that. But I think for me, it's just my story of being an Asian person growing up with white people isn't unique anymore. And I think the way I talk about it, the way I talk about my experiences and the way I've lived what I've done, meaning growing up in China, living in the States, getting sent back to China for work, giving all of that up to move to Germany where I know no one and nothing except for my husband. Yes, it's unique in the sense that not a lot of people have done it, but it's globalization. So for me, I just like sharing this idea of I can do it because it's what fit my life. And I think representation in that sense, me being Asian is one part of it. I think having the guts to just, or in my case, not really thinking about it too much and just doing it got me to where I am, I think.
I love that you mentioned, living a life that fits for you. Especially with Asian culture, we do things to fit others, right? We're taught to live a certain way of life that's been passed on from generation to generation to generation, not even thinking there's other ways of living life. A life where we can be happy, we can be our true selves, something that fits us versus the other way around. I just want to point that out because I thought that was really important to share. So thanks for sharing that, and share one reason as to why every Asian woman needs to read this book.
So what I like about this book is that we are all normal people. It's not no we're all successful in our own rights, don't get me wrong, but we are normal, approachable people. We're not fancy schmancy, it's just approachable. It's the fact that if you like me, I might have lived everywhere, but at the end of the day, I am a woman who fell in love with a man, got married, chose to have 2 children, raise them, have pregnancy, birth, all of that. And now I'm trying to figure out how to build my career a little bit more and do that next step. And it's not a very far-fetched story. I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to get married to Leonardo DiCaprio or something like that, And I think that's what's good about this book. Every story, there's parts of it that everyone can relate, and there's parts of it where people come through with something. And I think that makes it something interesting and makes it easier to relate and read about. And the good thing is, there's 18 of us and it's all chapter. It's very short as well. So it gives you a bit of an inspiration. You think about it and then you move on. And like for me personally, my chapter is more about, and this is something I usually, like my motto for my business is I always ask myself, what makes you stand out? What makes you different? But at the same time, realizing that this difference is what makes you unique, but it's also what makes you strong. And so I always say you stand out, but then you actually try to fit in at the same time, because until you're aware of what your strengths are and how you're different and use that to your advantage, you can't really feel power and feel control or strength of moving forward. And I think this variation of what I just said is in the book consistently in different words, different format, but the message is the same. It's about looking, reflecting, and thinking about who you are. And I think this gives Asian women specifically a kind of a touch point of saying, oh, hey, look at that. There's 18 ladies that have done it, So I like it. It's a nice project to be on, considering I work with majority of the time men.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's so true. Having that relatability factor is important, right? Because we want women to realize we're not Oprah. We're just normal people. We're normal people who decided to just make a decision to forge our own path. And even though it wasn't easy, we're going to keep doing it to show others what's possible. And what can readers gain from reading your story?
I think, and I'll talk about this when we're also in the summit, I think what I want is, besides my story, I want people to understand how to self-reflect, how to really stand there and look at yourself and think about all your strengths. And I do this, one is just be really honest with yourself. Like this, we can take something simple like losing weight. And I know it's not anything but simple, but honestly, look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, why am I losing weight? Why am I doing this? Why? What makes it important to me now versus a year ago? Why am I yo-yo dieting? As a woman, we all struggle with our weight. I have had 2 pregnancies and I had them pretty close together. So my body has not bounced back. And for me, it's been horrible because I used to run marathons, So it's like really this honesty to yourself is what I want to convey. I want people to be able to say, okay, honestly, this is what I stand for. This is what makes me special. And this is what will make people attracted to me. And the thing is, once you're out there with who you are, the people that attract themselves to you are genuine, are true, and will make your life better. Because if you're not really who you are and you're going out there, you're going to attract things that you don't necessarily really want. And that's how I feel about that.
I love it. Having that honesty, just being raw and real, because it's true, right? Sometimes we see social media and you see women who just gave birth have the perfect body and makeup. And it's that's not real. That's not feasible. Not everyone can look like they just got out of a salon. Everyone's going to look, most of the time you look like crap from pushing a baby for 24 hours.
Even then, I see celebrities that start walking 2 days later. I'm like, well, congratulations, you had a natural birth. That means you didn't have a cesarean, baby. And people with cesareans can't walk for a week, and that's normal. And there's just so many things. And so to add to that honesty factor, it's being honest with yourself, right? You don't have to go out and tell your husband or even your husband or anyone about what it is. It's just about being real with yourself. I think you are your biggest critic. And a lot of unhappy people are just in denial about what is actually happening to their lives. And that denial is what's killing you. And when I Say honest, I don't mean you to go out and tell anyone anything. It's just being honest to yourself. Look at yourself, look in the mirror and be like, oh my God. And I mean, weight loss is one thing. It's up in my list of, oh my God, what is happening to me? But there's also other things like getting a promotion, asking for a better salary, getting a better job, working, trying to ask your husband to like give in a little bit so that you can also have a career. I mean, these are all conversations that you have to be honest with yourself first, and then you can have and pursue.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a great boss up tip, right? Just to learn to be honest with yourself, because that's something we never really do or like are too afraid to do because we don't want to like dig down deep into the stuff that we really want to talk about or bring up with ourselves. And like you mentioned, you don't have to tell anybody. This is like sacred time that you have with yourself and you can kind of just write them down. But the moment you can just let it go and just be like, yeah, this is what's happening right now. Like just sharing it out into the world in your own way, in your special time, it makes a huge difference because you're like, finally, a weight's been lifted off of me and now I can figure out what's my next move. So I really love that you mentioned that. And Claire, would you be able to share with the audience where they can pre-order a copy of the physical book or where they can connect with you if you have any social media links or websites?
So I have a website, www.clarewimmer.com. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. To get the physical book, you can get it through Sheena.
Thank you so much. And yes, you can get a pre-signed copy of the book through my website. Part of the proceeds will go to help nonprofit organizations fight anti-Asian racism in Canada and the US because it's happening way too much now because of the pandemic. So feel free to check that out on the website. But if you want to connect with Claire, you can also head on over to thetowofselfconfidence.com and search for Claire's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I really just want to thank Claire today for taking the time to share her wisdom with us and her excitement for the book.
Thank you.
Not a problem. And before I go, if you're looking for business and marketing tips, check out the Soulful Social podcast, where Madison Tinder talks all things growing your business online and using marketing to sell your services. Visit www.madisontinderllc.com to listen to her podcast and tune in to another new episode of another amazing Asian Women Who Boss Up co-author who's going to share a little bit about her story, her wisdom, and her excitement for this book. So that's about it. Talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. You can order your copy of Asian Women Who Boss Up book by visiting our website at thetowofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.